Good Wednesday, my friends. How are you? Um, Happy to be with you today, talking about feels like the mother of all topics, um, facing our fear, um, making friends with our fear, which is a lofty goal, I do admit. Nonetheless, I think probably facing our fear, accepting our fear, is probably a little bit more accurate, right? Uh, as opposed to avoiding those things uh, about which we are fearful, right? Which is never terribly productive. Um, excuse me. Oh my gosh. Hello. Sorry. If you would please let me know that you're here again, because it's always so nice to know that I'm actually speaking to humans in the moment. And I say that knowing that there will be many of you who watch once this is posted and up, and you'll get to it later, all of which is awesome. And I'm very glad that you do that too. Um, it is a beautiful day here in Franklin, Tennessee. I think the high is supposed to be like 83 or something, like, just deliciously perfect. So later today, I'm going to go for a walk around some lake in Nashville. I can't remember the name of it, but my friend Sally told me about it, and so I'm now going to call it Sally Lake. So that's how we do it here in this house. Um, I I'm trying to think. I want to say thank you to so many of you who reached out to me. Um, Sort of seeing my sorrowful, broken heart, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate your kindness, like genuinely, um, and how much it meant to me, truly. These I'm reminded how much we need each other, right? And that even though this is on Facebook, it's very much relational, and so I just want you to know how much I appreciate you taking care of me. I truly do. Like, it means the world to me. So I'm doing better. Two steps forward, one step back. Today is a two steps forward kind of a day, which is kind of awesome. So I'm feeling kind of sassy about life and everything. So it's a good day to talk about fear. All right, let's like jump in here. Hi, Jeff. So glad that you're here. Thank you for making yourself known. Um, so, where does one start on the topic of facing our fears? Um, it's such a big topic, and one that grips us all from time to time, and some more than others. And uh, I would love, as people start to join, well, I'll mention this a little later when there are a few more people on the line. But I want to say this, like, you all know that I'm Christian, right? So I often sort of go back and refer to things relevant to my faith, which I think that, on some level, is relevant to all of us, regardless of what faith or no faith, that we practice. Um, and so I'll say this, right? There are, I believe it is 147. I mean, I got this number. Um, yeah, the phrase "do not be afraid" appears 147 times in Scripture. And really, regardless of your view on Scripture, um, whether you view it as historical document or the roadmap for your life, it's a pretty good um, story of the human condition, right? Um, I find it relevant, right, that it is the most often repeated phrase, right, which tells me that human beings um, need to be reminded all the time not to live in fear, which means that most of us are living in fear. And so, with that, I say, whatever fear you might be experiencing about your life, your career, which is really kind of what we're talking about, but I feel like it it spans our entire lives. So regardless of whatever fear you might be experiencing, whatever apprehension, you are not alone. You're just not alone. And I will tell you, for all the confidence I may exude from time to time, about life, about my career, about all kinds of things, I absolutely have deep seated fears that I continue to grapple with, on a daily basis to try to make my best life. And so it's an ongoing human thing that is completely normal. You are not weird. You are not alone. If you are if you find yourself gripped by fear and unable to make decisions or unable to move forward or unable to take a step, right? You're not alone. Consider it evidence that you are human, right? Um, hey, Vince. Thank you for the hug. um, so, you know, how does our fear manifest? What does it look like? What exactly are we afraid of? We can talk about fear of failure. Um, we can talk about fear of success, which I have always found to be a really strange concept, to be afraid of success. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Um, Fear of being made a fool, fear of being shamed, fear of, like in public, right? Fear of being rejected, uh, fear of being alone. Um, there are so many, right? Um, this idea of being fearful of success was really foreign to me until I decided to kind of step into entrepreneurial things, where uh, where if I was to take steps forward, I have there's the possibility of great success, right? And why would I be fearful of that? That's what I'm after. I'm after success. I'm after, financial independence. I'm after those sorts of things. And I think the fear of success thing for me anyway, um, is once once you sort of attain a particular level of success, that you got to maintain it, or that you have to keep building on it, that there's always something more that's expected of you. And could I possibly live up to that? Could I possibly keep creating, keep inventing, keep going, right? Um, and and that's true of the creative aspect of it. Like, is there more for me to create? And also, the do I even have the energy to keep going, right? And what if I don't? Then how will I be viewed? Will I be viewed as somebody who quit? Will I be viewed as somebody who really didn't have it in them, right? And again, that all comes back to being made a fool of, or being rejected, or being judged, right? So that's sort of how I have interpreted this whole notion of being fearful of success. I think when you do put yourself out in the world, you absolutely are subjecting yourself to criticism, and nobody likes to be criticized. Nobody likes to be criticized. Some people handle it better than others. Some people have learned to ignore it, but nobody likes it, you know? So there's that piece of fear of success. It's not really the success part, it's everything that comes along with the success that we, might be fearful of having to face, right? So, how do we um, how do we make friends with our fear? Again, it's a tricky phrase. It's not like we're pals walking around arm in arm, skipping, down the street, and in all our fearfulness together. Um, it's really more like facing it and understanding that it's real and it's present, and it's normal, right? So I want to give you an example of some fear that I faced in my life that really doesn't have anything to do with voiceover, but I don't think that our fear has anything to do really with voiceovers, particularly or specifically. It's something else in us. It's all that other stuff. It's like, if I engage this, will I be successful or will I fail? Will I be judged? Will people think I'm good at it? What if I'm not good at it? Right. So what I want to do is, I just want to tell you about a particular fear that used to really grip me, and the process that I went through in order to face it and ultimately get through it, right? And manage it. I want to say that. It's not like the fear is gone, but I have learned to manage it. And that is a fear of flying. I pretty much my whole young adult life, I was really afraid of flying, and it kept growing as I flew. My fear kept growing, and I could become incapacitated by it. And I might get on a plane, and uh, and I and maybe we're delayed, right? And I'm thinking, what's the delay? I wonder if it's a mechanical error, right? Like, I would spin this whole web, right? And I would just get stuck in this web of what if, and what's happening, and I don't know, and of course creating the worst possible scenario in my head, and then turbulence would undo me, like truly undo me. Um, it it always felt like the precursor to something, you know, monumental and catastrophic. Um, and so I couldn't even tolerate the littlest bumps, you know. So I've been on flights where there's been a bit of delay, and I've been so overcome by my fear that I had to get off the plane. Like, I had to get the flight attendant and say, I need to get off the plane. And and I would be the flight attendant would roll their eyes, and stuff like that. Like, um, and of course, then once you get off the plane, they have to get your bag off the plane. They can't let your bag fly without you. And so I would, a couple of times, I delayed the flight even further, right? By getting off of the flight, and then they have to stop everything they're doing, right? They can't go until my bag is off, right? So delaying everybody because of my fear. I've had to talk to the pilot. I found myself in the bathroom, crying my eyes out because I thought that this flight was going to go down and my life was going to be over, and needing to talk to the pilot before I can to decide whether or not I can stay on the flight, like that kind of stuff, right? Like, and I would drink, on flights, like, and I would have to have a drink before I get on the flight, just to have a level of, where I just wasn't crawling out of my skin in fear, right? So sometime it was I was so overwhelmed by my fear and incapacitated by it that I searched, I don't know, I found this class that was provided by American Airlines at the time, where it was for people who are afraid to fly, and it was a weekend thing, and it was taught by a couple of pilots, and there was a flight attendant, and and so they talked to us really about all kinds of things. There were psychological techniques, to help us through a flight. They had all kinds of facts and figures about the safety of flying. Um, like, it was pretty all encompassing, right? And it culminated in a flight from LAX to San Jose and back, right? And so everybody in this class, once we're done with the weekend, it's like we all board this flight, and you know, and fortunately, I on that flight got to sit next to the pilot who was teaching the class. And so one of my biggest things was, I heard every little thing, right? I heard every little movement of the wing flaps and the engines, how the engines sort of, gain power, reduce power. And every time there was some change in something, it terrified me. Like if the engines, if they slow down, I felt like, all right, well, here we go. We're going down. I mean, like truly, I was undone by all of this, right? And so that was a really helpful thing to me. And one of the statistics that I was given by this in this class was that I would have to fly every day for 29,000 years in order for my so-called number to come up, right? Before a flight I was on would crash. That's how safe flying is. There are tens of thousands, I'm sure even more, flights in the air every day, right? So I still carry that little statistic in my head, but that isn't what really did it for me in terms of my fear. It definitely helped, but the thing I ultimately had to do, and this is what I encourage everyone to do with whatever fear they're facing, right, is as they say in AA, walk the drink out. Like, and that is to say, if in AA, if you take a drink, what are the consequences of that? What will happen? Sure, you feel like taking a drink right now. So what will happen if you do? Let's say you do. Okay. So let's say with regard to your fear, it's that um, you're afraid that you will never book something. Okay. So what will happen to your person if you never book anything? Like, is it life threatening? Right? Like, what happens uh, if you get dropped by an agent? Um, is that the end of your career? Are there other avenues? Are there other agents? Like, you walk out all of the possibilities, right? And ultimately ask yourself if you can survive them. Can you survive it? Right? Can you survive failing? Yes, you can. Failure is a necessary part of success. So, can you survive failure? Absolutely. Can you survive looking foolish? Absolutely. Can you survive being rejected? Yes, you can. Because there are so many people who accept you. I'll even say, what if there's only one or two people who accept you? Well, you've got one or two people who accept you. It's not over, right? It's not the end. So for me, when I would talk about my fear of flying and walking out my fear, what exactly am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of turbulence. Well, why does turbulence upset you? Because it feels like I'm out of control. Like I can't, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, what if it does get worse and worse? Right? And I would just keep asking myself, what would happen if? What would happen if? What would happen if? Ultimately, I realized that it wasn't flying I was afraid of. It was not being in control, that I was not in control of the plane, of the flight, that I was actually, every time I step onto a plane, I'm handing control of my life over to what to pilots, right? That's what we're all doing when we step onto a plane. When we're the passenger in a car, we're handing over control of our life to the driver. That's what we're doing, right? And so this fear of I'm not in control, and then I ask myself the question, well, are you in control? And the answer is no, I'm not. I'm not in control ultimately of my life. If you're a believer in anything outside yourself, right? It's this realization that your life is in the hands of your creator. That's the truth. And so once I realized I wasn't in control, I was trying to wrest control of something that I actually have no business trying to control. what I needed to do was surrender. That's what I needed to do, surrender. And I think that that is what all of us need to do in the face of our fear, is surrender and realize that we may very well, in fact, fail. We, uh, we may very well be made a fool of, and we may very well be rejected. And there's something about admitting that that is liberating, because we can survive being rejected, and we can survive failure, and we can survive being made a fool of. And and ultimately, again, I speak from my own experience and my own understanding of the world, and so I hope you'll take it with that knowledge. Like, I'm just sharing what I know and what I experience, and I recognize that your experience of these things is going to be different. And so I would just hope that you would be able to, grab onto whatever speaks to you, right? So for me, ultimately, I think if if my life is not my own and I'm not ultimately in control of it, then the surrender part, right, is the most important part. And if I am a believer, and I think that after this life is another life, then no matter what happens to this plane in the sky, my life still belongs to my creator, whether I'm in this, this particular vessel, this earthly vessel, if you will, or not. Right? And so there was something really liberating about that. And then the whole process of exploring what that means um, to surrender my fear. Um, and so, again, this whole notion of asking yourself what the potential consequences are of taking a risk, because that's what we do when we're afraid. When in the face of fear, like, why are we afraid? It's because we're about to step into unknown territory, which is frightening, which is normal. I mean, that's a normal response and reaction, right? And I think sometimes we look at people, we live in this world of, Facebook and TikTok, where everybody shows their best self and their most beautiful self and their most put together self. But that's not real life. It's not real life. You have a child, it's a big, fat risk. You are stepping into unknown territory. You get married, you are stepping into unknown territory. You get a divorce, you are stepping into unknown territory. You quit your corporate job to do something that you love. You are stepping into unknown territory. And it is normal to be fearful. And it's at that point that I say, remember who you are. Remember that you are a beautiful creature created in the image of God. That there are people who love you and people who want the best for you. And if you have people in your life who you discover don't want the best for you, or really aren't on your side, or don't know how to support you through difficulty, perhaps those aren't your people, right? And you need to assess that, right? And really begin to search out people who really do want the best for you and can buoy you and support you while you are facing the unknown, while you are facing your fear, right? And it's and it may be that there are only one or two people like that in your life, that you end up with one or two people like that. And you know what? What a bloody blessing that is, to have even one person who can walk with you and encourage you through your fear, through the unknown, right? It's a blessing. And this notion that we have to have, a million friends, who are of like mind and who can, who can help us out, it's a myth. So if you've got one, great. If you have more than one, it's a miracle, Ultimately, I just want to say that again, you're not alone, and that you can survive stepping out into the unknown. I remember once being I used to sing I used to sing in a I've sung in a couple of groups throughout my years, and I sang once with two other amazing female singers, and we had the good fortune of opening for at the time a beginning. He was just kind of starting out. Stephen Curtis Chapman is a very prominent Christian artist. He's a remarkable artist and has been through great difficulty in his life. Um, but he was young and fresh and kind of just getting started. And he was doing a concert at Knott's Berry Farm, and we knew his booking agent. We were friends, and we were sort of all getting ourselves, you know, it's like we were pursuing that, right? And he booked us to open for Stephen Curtis Chapman at Knott's Berry Farm. And I don't ever recall being more nervous and afraid uh, than that night. I remember being in the bathroom and just thinking I was going to pass out, you know, because the opening part of the music, I had the first line uh, uh, in the song, right, and it had a really strange tempo at the beginning, and so if I missed the opening, and we sang to tracks, right, and so it was like if I miss it, we're off the whole song, right? So it comes down to like one, and I'm not very, I don't, well, it was hard for me to hear. I was going to say that I don't have great time, but that's not true. I don't want to tell a lie about myself. That it was just it was a hard thing for me to hear. Anyway, I really felt like I was going to faint, and I could barely breathe, and I felt like I was having a experience outside of my body, right? And I felt that way until the moment I stepped on the stage. And I listened, and I heard where I was supposed to come in, and we started, and it all worked, right? And so I think that fear grips us as we're contemplating the action that we need to take. But as soon as we take the action, something happens in us, and we're okay. Like it's the anticipation of the thing, right, that is really gripping and terrifying. But once we step out, we're all right. And as I've examined other fears in my life, that has held true. If I just do the thing, if I just am willing to take a big deep breath and do the thing, I will discover that it's all okay. It's all okay, right? And so I don't want to, I've already spoken too long, but I just want to say again, right? Fear is normal. You are not alone. You can survive the consequences of stepping out into the unknown. And I would love, I think the thing I would love to leave you with is this idea of surrendering to it. You know, surrender is a beautiful thing. It really is. And if we can accept that we are not in control of every last little thing, it can actually be quite liberating. I know that had I messed up those lyrics that night at that concert, we would have found our way back. I've messed up lyrics before on stage. It is terrifying. But look at me, I'm still here. Right? Those things are not insurmountable. And that is the truth. Anything that we're really afraid of is not insurmountable. So I'm going to leave you with that, uh, and say to you, don't be afraid. It's going to be all right. I wrote a song called "Don't Be Afraid." I should post it for you. I listen to it sometimes and I go, wow, like That was a pretty good song. I like the sentiment of it, you know? So, anyway, I want to leave you with that. Don't be afraid. Um, I should go look and see what you're saying. I haven't even looked. It's terrible. I got too inside of myself there. Um, Jeff, Vince, Genevieve. Oh, I love the way that rolls off my tongue. John, thank you guys so much for being here. I really, really, really appreciate it. And those of you who are seeing this after the fact, thank you for watching. Um, yes, trust and be brave. Indeed. That's what we do. We have to trust and be brave in the face of our fears. So don't be afraid. And I will see you next week. As always, feel free again to leave comments in the thread, and find me wherever you find me. Um, and we will talk next time. All right, everybody, have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday and a great rest of the week. And I'll see you next week. Ciao.